Hey, what's going on, everyone? And specifically to those of you that are Power Rangers fans, this is something that I have been requested because of the fact that these episodes are currently airing in the UK. They don't have a release date stateside yet, but this is one that I was asked about earlier on the stream, and I knew this was one I was going to end up watching. I said, you know, what the heck, I'll watch it before its US release over here and give some of my thoughts, although I will be doing something a little bit out of the ordinary when it comes to these team up episodes, and that is giving a spoiler free review. I'm going to wait until this one comes stateside to maybe go back and revisit it and maybe give a little bit more of a spoiler review. But for those of you wondering, this will be a spoiler free review. Not going to talk about anything regarding the plot or that will reveal the plot, or at the very least I'm going to try my best not to. But I just want to give my overall thoughts on this particular team-up episode because, as you know, that's been something of a tradition with Power Rangers over the years. For a good long while, there was a good chunk of time where certain seasons didn't have team-up episodes, right? Whether it be from 2 to 3 or 4 year intervals, there was certain times within the ownership of the Power Rangers franchise where team-ups didn't happen on a yearly basis. So this is something that they're kind of getting back to now, right? With seasons of Power Rangers where they're doing at least one team up with either a previous season or the previous season. And I think that that's really good. Or at the very least, there's some other Rangers from previous seasons showing up in these team ups. I mean, we saw this pretty much started with the Legendary Battle, right? Once Saban got a hold of the Power Rangers franchise again, we saw it with the Legendary Battle in Super Mega Force, which by and large was, I think it's fair to say, most people didn't. It wasn't the best reception to a team-up episode, I will say. A lot of people felt it was very underwhelming. Some people liked it, but for the most part, it seems like the general consensus was that it wasn't a good team-up, right? It wasn't a good, mixing of this tradition, right? That they've had in previous Power Rangers seasons of previous teams or whatever, or previous Rangers joining in an epic battle of sorts where their help is required. It by and large, I think that the reason why people felt that way was because of the season itself not being too popular, right? And for the most part, in the Legendary Battle, a lot of people felt that it was really just a lot of glorified cameos. There wasn't a whole lot of context behind these Rangers showing up. It's just like, hey, we're here to help, and that was it. And people didn't really care for that. Now, I'm going to be completely honest when I say regarding this team up that in some ways it did feel that way to me, that it felt like a glorified cameo in terms of the return of Legendary Ranger Jason Lee Scott, aka the very first Red Ranger, first leader of the Power Rangers, portrayed by Austin St. John. One thing I will say with the previous team up is that they did this thing where they added a Tommy story arc in that episode, which I didn't really care for. I could care less about it. And the reason I bring that up is because of the difference with them bringing Jason back in this episode, because the motivation behind it is not because of some subplot that is happening with him or anything like that. This episode from beginning to end really felt, I won't say disjointed, but like with the previous team up in Ninja Steel, it did feel rushed. But when you think about it, they're trying to do a lot of stuff in a 20 plus minute time frame. There's not a whole lot of character fleshing out or development that you can do, or there's not a whole lot of story that you can tell when you're trying to bring back characters from previous seasons like this, right? There's not a whole lot of time that you can really dedicate. You got to move along the plot that you're currently on in this particular episode, which is what they did. But at times it was just kind of just go, right? It wasn't, it wasn't this thing of really delving in as to what's been going on with this character or anything like that. It's just kind of like, hey, what's up? Oh, hey, you're so-and-so. Yeah, cool. Yeah, well, hey, need your help. Oh, okay. And that was pretty much it. That's kind of the feeling I got with this episode. That's really what it turned into, was a little bit more of that glorified cameo, probably not as bad as what happened in the Legendary Battle with Super Mega Force. but it definitely gave me those kind of vibes. Now, to be fair here, I think that that's not necessarily a bad thing. And the reason I say that is because with the Ninja Steel episode where Tommy returned once again, right, and they did that whole subplot with Tommy in it, I'm just like, I didn't really care, right? It's just like, okay. I mean, it's not to say that we shouldn't learn what these characters have been up to. I think that you can do that without dedicating this whole other story arc to this character that has ramifications in the main story of the episode. You know what I mean? I kind of like the fact that they didn't do that with this particular cameo, because it wasn't Jason coming back to overshadow the current Rangers of this season. You know, it's a little bit of a glorified cameo, yes, in a sense, but it's more to kind of, I guess, tickle the nostalgia funny bone a little bit with his reappearance here. That's what I felt. I felt it was really more to just, well, we got the other Dino-themed Rangers in this season. Let's bring back the OG. Why not? And just have a little bit more of that nostalgia, for the people that grew up watching the Mighty Morphin season that might be watching this season with their kids. They could point to that. See that guy? That's the guy that mommy and daddy, grew up watching when they were kids. He was part of our Power Rangers. I think it's one of those things that will elicit, that kind of showing of legacy, right? Of the long-standing history of Power Rangers at this point. That it's something that people will be able to relate to their children and say, hey, look, that guy, I used to watch. That's the guy I used to watch when I was starting to watch Power Rangers. That was the Red Ranger. That was the guy that led the team. That's the one that started it all, basically. And I think there's something cool to be said about that. It's obviously a cool thing to be able to do with that next generation of fans, right? So I feel that, a lot of it is mostly nostalgia. There wasn't really a whole lot of substance here, but then again, would you expect a whole lot of substance from a show that is really geared towards kids? But at times, I'm not going to lie to you, it did feel like there was a lot of just really of a disjointed feeling. One thing I will say is there's a lot of action in this episode, which is good. The pacing of the episode is, even though it feels a little disjointed, the thing is, it's a consistent pace of just kind of nonstop action. I was just kind of like, wow, this is probably one of the more action-packed team-ups I have probably ever seen in a Power Rangers episode. None of the action lulled. From beginning to the end of the episode, it was just go. But that's also to its detriment, because that's where it feels completely rushed. It's just like, whoa, hold on, just pump the brakes for a moment. I'm glad that you're carrying things along, but it wouldn't be too bad to kind of slow the car down a little bit. Let's find out what's going on here. Let's find out where we're going here a little bit. So that's kind of the feeling I got from this episode, was that it was much too fast-paced for its own good. And at times it's not that you can't really keep up. It's just kind of like it just becomes a blur at that point. You're just like, before you know it, it's over. Which again, there's not a whole lot to draw from that. Like I said, the most I can take away from it was that, he appeared after X amount of time. There's this obvious feeling of, tying everything back right to the beginning with his appearance in this. Going across all the different hands that this has been through. Right, we go from Saban to Disney to Neo Saban, now into Hasbro. All tied back together because of this, because of this episode with the Dino Thunder team showing up, with the Dino Charge team showing up, and ultimately the OG Red Ranger himself, Austin St. John, portraying Jason. Jason Lee Scott returning, tying all those things back together, and now moving forward with this Hasbro season. Just kind of, it was a good way to kind of thread all those things together, I thought. And show that, yes, there's going to be acknowledgement of all these seasons, and this is more of adding to the rich history and the legacy, I guess you could say, of the Power Rangers lore. So there's some good things to feel about it, but like I said, ultimately, I wouldn't say it's nowhere near close to being the best team up. I think that after people watch this, by and large, they will still agree. I think that the general consensus will still be that Forever Red probably is, I guess, kind of the gold standard in terms of a legendary team up episode. So this one, definitely not the worst, but wouldn't say it's anywhere near close to being the best either. It's just kind of there. It's a nice, like I said, there's some nice nods there that you feel, and some respect shown to the older seasons, but you definitely feel like you want a little bit more substance. But at the same time, like I said, I'm taking into account the fact that you want to spotlight these newer Rangers, right? Because these are the ones that the children of now are growing up with. They're growing up with the Beast Morphers Rangers, you know what I mean? And that's what's going to be important to them first and foremost, because these are the ones that they've dedicated their time to. These are the ones that they have emotionally invested in up to this point. So the fact that they're still kind of front and center at all this, I can appreciate that. I can appreciate that not bringing back a former Ranger that has such a strong legacy behind him, you know what I mean, and has that pop cultural status behind him, isn't overshadowing the current season. I think it was a fair way to do it, if I'm being completely honest here. And I think that in that regard, I could kind of appreciate it. Of course, selfishly, one looks at this, especially having grown up with this, with Mighty Morphin Power Rangers myself. Selfishly, of course, I would want to see a little bit more dedicated to the Jason character, right? A little bit more time dedicated to him and finding out what happened with him. But you know what? I'm okay with taking him in a small dose. You know what I mean? Maybe there'll be another time where they could explore a little bit more what Jason has gone through, right? Since back in 1993. Or back in the 90s, I should say. I'm okay with it. Maybe there'll be another time, maybe there won't, but either way, like I said, it'll scratch a little bit of that nostalgia itch. It might disappoint some people, of course, because they'll probably feel that there wasn't enough time. But given how certain cameos have been handled in some of these other team-up episodes, it could have been a lot worse. It really could have. There could have been way less time for him to show up. So, like I said, all in all, I think it's okay. Don't think it's great. I think it's just kind of there. I think it's a fair team-up episode. I wouldn't say that it's breaking down any new doors or anything like that. It's just it is what it is, I guess, is the best way I could put it. And like I said, it's really hard to talk about because I do want to get into these spoilers, but I just want to talk about how I felt about it overall and what I thought about it. And I think that once people watch this episode, I think you'll understand a little bit more what I mean by the things I've said and the way that it made me feel personally. But all in all, not, like I said, not the worst team-up episode. Certainly nowhere near close to being the best, though. But okay for what it is. So take that for what you will. I'm sure that plenty of you will have comments in the section below about this if you've already seen the episode, and probably even more so after many of you watch this episode if you're waiting for the US release. So I just wanted to give, like I said, a spoiler-free review. Tell me what y'all think, and until next time, y'all know how it goes. The hunt continues. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a like, share, and comment below.